Imagine a cold night in the American wilderness, sometime in the 1820s. A young boy lies on his stomach on the floor of a small log cabin. The fire is almost out. The only light comes from the last few orange flames in the fireplace. But the boy does not sleep. He is reading. His name is Abraham Lincoln, and one day he will save a nation. Now imagine a Roman emperor nearly 2,000 years ago, sitting alone in his tent on the edge of a battlefield. Around him his soldiers sleep, but he is awake, writing in a small private journal. Not orders for war, but questions about how to be a better person. His name is Marcus Aurelius, and those quiet words, written for no one but himself, became one of the most famous books in human history. What connects these two men and dozens of other great leaders across the centuries? What did Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates all share beyond their power and their fame? Every single one of them was obsessed with reading. They were readers before they were leaders, and perhaps it was the reading that made them leaders at all. Welcome to English Through Great Stories. I'm your narrator for today's journey, a journey through history, through remarkable minds, and through the extraordinary power of books. Today's story is called Why Great Leaders Read Constantly. Sit back, relax, and let the words carry you forward. This is a story about reading, yes, but more than that, it is a story about what it means to grow. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Read by Firelight. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 in a small log cabin in Kentucky in the United States. His family was very poor. There were no schools nearby. There were almost no books. His mother died when he was just 9 years old. By the time he was a young man, Lincoln had received less than 1 year of formal education in total. Less than 12 months of sitting in a classroom. And yet Abraham Lincoln became one of the most powerful writers and speakers in American history. His speeches changed hearts and changed laws. His words helped end slavery. How? He read. He read everything he could find. The Bible, Aesop's fables, the poetry of Robert Burns, history books, law books. He would walk miles through the forest just to borrow a single book from a neighbor. Lincoln once said that the things he wanted to know were in books. His best friend was the man who would give him a book he had not yet read. There is a famous image of Lincoln lying in front of the fire at night, reading by the light of the last dying flames, because his family could not afford candles. That image is a portrait of hunger, a deep, burning hunger for knowledge. Lincoln read slowly and carefully. He would read a passage, close the book, and repeat what he had just read out loud until he understood it completely. He was not reading for entertainment. He was reading to think, to build himself. And slowly, page by page, year by year, he built a mind capable of holding an entire nation together during its most terrible war. Lincoln's reading gave him something that no school could easily teach: empathy. By reading the stories of other people's lives, he learned to understand suffering and to feel other people's pain as if it were his own. When he became president, that empathy showed in every decision he made. He was not a cold politician. He was a man who had lived 1,000 lives through books, and when he spoke, people felt that he truly understood them. Chapter 2. The Warrior Who Wrote to Himself. Let us travel back nearly 2,000 years to the ancient world of Rome. The year is around 170 AD. The Roman Empire is the greatest power on earth, stretching from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to the borders of Persia. And leading this vast empire is a man named Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, and one of the most thoughtful human beings who ever lived. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic philosopher. Stoicism focused on self-control, reason, and living a good life regardless of what happened around you. As a young man, Marcus studied philosophy not as a school subject, but as a way of life. He believed that to lead others well, you must first learn to lead yourself, and the tool he used for that was reading and writing. Every night, Marcus Aurelius wrote in a private journal. He did not write to be read by others. He wrote to think, to remind himself of the principles he believed in, to challenge himself and ask honestly, am I living well? Am I being just? Am I doing enough good in the world? These private writings survived 2,000 years. We know them today as the Meditation. The Meditations is not a book about war or politics. It is a book about the inner life of a man who happened to be emperor, full of questions, self-doubt, and honest reflection. Marcus writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was writing for himself alone, but his words have spoken to every generation since. What is fascinating about Marcus Aurelius is that his greatness came from his willingness to keep learning, to keep reading philosophy, to keep asking whether he was living well enough. He was the most powerful man in the world, and yet he wrote like a humble student, questioning, uncertain, always seeking to improve. That combination of immense power and genuine humility is extraordinarily rare, and it came from a life devoted to books and reflection. Chapter 3. The Rough Riders' Library. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, is one of the most remarkable figures in American history. He was an explorer, a soldier, a naturalist, a politician, and an accomplished writer. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He charged up a hill on horseback during the Spanish-American War. He hunted lions in Africa and explored unknown rivers deep in the Amazon jungle. He seemed at times like a character from an adventure novel, but perhaps Roosevelt's most extraordinary achievement was this. He read approximately one book every single day of his adult life. Whether in the White House, at war, or deep in the African wilderness, Roosevelt found time to read. In his lifetime, he is estimated to have read more than 35,000 books. His memory was extraordinary. He could quote poems, scientific papers, and historical accounts years after reading them. People who visited him were astonished by his range of knowledge across history, science, poetry, and military strategy. Roosevelt believed that reading was the foundation of action. He was not a quiet academic man who stayed in the library while life happened elsewhere. He was famous for his physical energy, his boldness, his love of adventure and danger. But he also understood that bold action without knowledge is simply recklessness. The books he read gave him context, perspective, and wisdom. They helped him act well, not just act quickly. There is a wonderful story about Roosevelt on his Amazon expedition in 1913. He was deep in the Brazilian jungle, exploring a river that had never been mapped by Western science. He was seriously ill with fever. His leg was badly infected. The conditions were terrible and dangerous, and yet every evening Roosevelt would sit by his campfire, exhausted, sick, sometimes in real pain, and open his book. Reading was not something he did when life was comfortable. It was something he did always. Chapter 4. Words in the Darkness. Winston Churchill was born in 1874 into a wealthy British family. He had every advantage that money could provide. And yet Churchill felt his formal education had been terribly incomplete. He had attended one of England's most famous schools, but learned surprisingly little there. He was considered a poor student, difficult and inattentive. After joining the army, he made a decision that would change the direction of his life. Churchill was posted to India as a young army officer in 1896. Long, hot afternoons with very little to do. And so he wrote to his mother in England and asked her to send him books. Dozens of books. History, philosophy, economics, science, biography. He spent those slow afternoons reading with fierce concentration. He later described this period as the true beginning of his education. He was teaching himself, one book at a time, to think. Churchill's greatest test came in 1940. Germany had invaded France. Britain stood almost alone against Nazi Germany. Many intelligent people believed the war was already lost, that surrender was the only reasonable option. But Churchill became Prime Minister, and he refused. His speeches gave Britain the strength to continue fighting. Where did those words come from? From a lifetime spent reading the greatest writers, historians, and orators who had ever lived. Churchill became a great writer in his own right. He wrote more than 40 books and won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953 for his historical writing and his speeches. He found his deepest strength in words and gave those words back to the world transformed. Courage, resolve, and the belief that darkness can be survived. That is the extraordinary cycle of reading. You receive, and then you give. Chapter 5. The Girl from Mississippi. Oprah Winfrey grew up in rural Mississippi in the 1950s and 1960s. Her childhood was marked by poverty, instability, and real suffering. She moved between family members. She faced hardships that no child should ever face. But from a very early age, one thing brought her comfort, escape, and hope. Books. Oprah has spoken many times about how reading saved her, not just as entertainment, but as a genuine form of survival. As a very small child, Oprah learned to read before most of her classmates. Her grandmother taught her, using the Bible and whatever books she could find. Reading immediately opened a window for Oprah, a window to worlds far beyond the poverty and difficulty of her childhood. She read about people with different lives, different dreams, different possibilities. And slowly, those books planted in her young mind the idea that her own life could be different too. Oprah has said, "Books were my path to personal freedom. I learned to read at age 3 and soon discovered there was a whole world to conquer that went beyond our farm in Mississippi." That idea, books as a path to freedom, is one of the most powerful things about reading. For people whose physical circumstances limit what they can do or where they can go, books have no limits. You can be anywhere, be anyone, and imagine everything. As she became one of the most successful and influential people on earth, Oprah never stopped reading. Her famous television book club, launched in 1996, became a genuine cultural movement. When Oprah recommended a book, it immediately sold millions of copies around the world. She used her extraordinary platform to share her love of reading with everyone. She believed, and still believes, that reading is one of the most powerful tools any human being can possess. Oprah reads every night before she sleeps. No matter how demanding her days are, and her days are extraordinarily demanding, she always makes time for a book. She says it is how she processes the world, understands herself, and continues to grow. For Oprah Winfrey, reading is not a hobby. It is a practice, a discipline, a form of self-care that she recommends to absolutely everyone. Chapter 6: The Dreamers Who Read the Future. Elon Musk is one of the most talked-about figures of the 21st century. He built PayPal, Tesla, and SpaceX. He has spoken openly about his ambition to make humanity a multi-planetary species, to send human beings to Mars within his lifetime. His ideas are enormous, almost unbelievable, and when people ask him how he learned enough about rocket science to build a private space company, his answer is remarkably simple. He read books about it. Musk grew up in South Africa and spent much of his childhood in libraries and bookshops. As a boy, he sometimes read for 10 hours a day. He read science fiction, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein. These stories shaped his vision of what the future could look like. He also read encyclopedias, science textbooks, and histories of technology. By the time he was a teenager, he had read his way through the entire local library. What is extraordinary about Musk's reading is how directly it connected to action. He did not read as passive entertainment. He read to understand how things worked, and then he applied that understanding. When he decided to build rockets, he read every available textbook on aerospace engineering. His early engineers at SpaceX were astonished that their chief executive could discuss highly technical details as confidently as a trained engineer. Bill Gates has a different relationship with books, but one equally intense. The co-founder of Microsoft reads approximately 50 books per year, roughly one per week. He takes careful notes, makes connections between ideas from very different fields, and shares reviews publicly on his blog. For Gates, reading is not separate from his work. It is the engine that powers his thinking. Gates is famous for his annual Think Week, 1 week each year where he goes alone to a small private cottage with no meetings, no colleagues, and no distractions. He brings a large pile of books and research papers. He reads and thinks for 7 days. This quiet, solitary ritual has led to some of his most important ideas and business decisions. He has called it the most productive week of his entire year. Gates has said, "Reading is still the main way that I both learn new things and test my understanding." This is the deeper purpose of reading for a serious mind. When you read carefully, you discover not only what you know, but what you only thought you knew. Books reveal the true boundaries of your knowledge. And then, if you keep reading, they slowly push those boundaries further out. Chapter 7: The President and His Books. Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States, is widely regarded as one of the most intellectually gifted people ever to hold that office. He was a constitutional law professor before entering politics and the author of 2 best-selling memoirs. Throughout his presidency, even during the most intense and difficult moments, he continued to read every day. For Obama, reading was not a luxury. It was a necessity. Obama has spoken about the role of novels in his life with particular warmth. He reads fiction not merely for pleasure, but because great novels teach us something that policy papers cannot. They teach us how it feels to be someone else. They build the moral imagination. They ask us to sit inside another person's experience, their suffering, their joy, their hope. That, Obama says, is essential for any leader. During his 8 years as president, Obama faced decisions of extraordinary complexity. Wars, global economic crises, climate change, terrorism, and deep divisions within his own country. In interviews, he described how important it was to come home at night, put his children to bed, and sit quietly with a book. The books helped him slow down. They gave him a wider, longer perspective on history and on what it means to be human. Obama once said, "At a time when events move so quickly and so much information is flooding us, the ability to slow down and get perspective, the ability to get into someone else's shoes, is something that has to be actively cultivated." He was talking about reading, about the unique attention and empathy that reading builds in us. In a world full of noise, a book is silence, and silence is where wisdom learns to speak. After leaving the White House in 2017, one of the first things Obama did was share his annual reading list with the world. Millions of people read it with real interest, not because they were told to, but because there is something powerful about seeing a person you admire, knowing which books helped them think, endure, and lead. Books feel like maps, and great readers share their maps generously. Chapter 8. What the books actually gave them. We have now traveled through many centuries and many continents. We have met a poor boy in Kentucky reading by firelight, a Roman emperor questioning himself in his tent, a British soldier spending hot afternoons with philosophy, a girl in Mississippi who found freedom in pages, and a child in South Africa who read his way to the stars. It is time now to ask, what did all those books actually give these people? The first gift was knowledge, raw information, facts, history, science, the recorded experience of humanity. But this was perhaps the least important gift of all. What books gave these leaders that was truly irreplaceable was something deeper, a way of thinking. The ability to sit with a difficult question, turn it slowly, and arrive, not at a quick answer, but at a wise one. The second gift was perspective. When you read real history, you understand that the problems of today are rarely entirely new. They follow patterns. Lincoln read about democratic republics and understood democracy's deep fragility. Churchill studied the history of war and understood both its necessity and its tragedy. Their reading gave them a long view, a view that stretched across centuries. The third gift was empathy. Every great novel, every great biography asks you to inhabit another human being, to see through their eyes, to feel what they felt. When Obama read great literature, he was practicing the imaginative act of stepping outside himself and into another life. That ability to truly understand other people is perhaps the single most important quality of great and lasting leadership. The fourth gift was language. Every person on this list was also a powerful communicator. Lincoln's speeches, Churchill's addresses, Oprah's conversations, Obama's oratory. All of them could express complex ideas with clarity and emotion. And that ability came from reading, from absorbing great writing across thousands of hours. The language of great books enters you quietly and gradually and slowly, beautifully, becomes your own. The fifth gift, and perhaps the most personal, was comfort. Lincoln suffered from deep depression throughout his life. Churchill spoke of his dark moods. Oprah endured real trauma in her early years. In those dark moments, books were not simply tools for learning. They were companions. They whispered, "You are not alone. Other human beings have faced darkness like yours. They survived. They even grew. So can you." Chapter 9. The Habit That Anyone Can Build. None of these people were born with extraordinary reading habits. They built them. Lincoln read whatever he could find in a world where books were rare. Roosevelt built his habit in childhood and maintained it faithfully throughout his long, eventful life. Yeats protects his reading time deliberately, even against enormous professional demands. The habit of reading is not a natural talent. It is a choice, made again and again. You might wonder, in a world of smartphones, podcasts, and short videos, does reading still matter? The answer from both neuroscience and the lived experience of great leaders is this. Reading, real reading, sitting quietly with a text on a page, does something to the brain that other media cannot fully replicate. It builds concentration. It trains the mind to hold complexity. It demands and develops sustained, deep attention. When you read, you are not passive. You are actively constructing meaning, sentence by sentence, building a model of reality inside your own mind. You must visualize characters and places, hold ideas in memory, and connect them to new ones as they arrive. You must slow down when you do not understand, go back, reread, try again. This active process builds the kind of mental strength essential for solving real, complex, truly important problems in the world. Reading changes your relationship with time itself. We live in a world that moves very fast. News, messages, and notifications arrive constantly. Books move slowly. They ask you to sit still, to be patient, to resist the pull of distraction. This is uncomfortable at first, but as you practice, something remarkable happens. You start to enjoy the slowness. You find depth where before you only found speed. You begin to think more clearly and feel more fully. Final chapter. A letter to you, the reader. We have come now to the end of our journey together. Before we close, I want to speak to you directly. You are learning English, and that is an act of genuine courage and real intelligence. You are using another language to understand the world more deeply, to connect with more people, and to reach further than you might otherwise go. That is, in its own way, a kind of reading. The leaders we discussed today were not perfect people. Lincoln made political mistakes. Churchill's decisions caused real suffering in distant parts of the empire. Roosevelt held views we now consider deeply wrong. Musk is a controversial figure. Reading did not make any of them perfect, but it helped them think more clearly, grow beyond their beginnings, and reflect honestly on who they were and who they wished to become. And that possibility is available to all of us. You do not need to be an emperor or a president. You need only a book and the willingness to sit quietly with it. 15 minutes a day is enough to begin. 15 minutes every day across 1 year, that is nearly 100 hours of reading. That is a genuinely different mind. Think about what you want to understand more deeply. The history of your country or another, science, psychology, philosophy, fiction that takes you inside a different life or a different century. Whatever calls to you, follow that call. Your curiosity is a compass, and it is more accurate than any plan. It will guide you to the books that will change you, and they will change you. This is one of the most reliable truths in all of human experience. The boy reading by the light of a dying fire in Kentucky did not know that one day he would stand before a divided nation and ask it to be better. The girl in Mississippi who read to escape her small world did not know her voice would one day reach every corner of the earth. Books did not predict their futures. Books helped them build those futures, one page at a time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. Just do the good work now. Be present. Keep learning. Keep growing." Those words were written in quiet darkness nearly 2,000 years ago by a man who is still read, still quoted, and still deeply beloved today. That is the true power of a book. It outlives everyone who touches it. Churchill once said, "I am always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught." Learning is not always comfortable. Books challenge us with ideas we disagree with and truths we were not yet ready to face. But that discomfort is precisely where growth lives. The moments when a book makes you stop and truly think, those are the moments that slowly, quietly, permanently change who you are. Obama once said simply, read everything you can get your hands on. Not as a duty or homework to be completed and forgotten, but because the world is larger than any one life can contain. And books are how we reach beyond our own small experience into the extraordinary, sometimes terrifying, always fascinating story of what it means to be human. Books remind us that we are never truly alone. Every time you open a book, you are doing what Lincoln did in the Firelight, what Marcus Aurelius did in his tent, what Churchill did in India, what Oprah did in Mississippi. You are reaching across distance, across time, across every difference that divides us towards understanding. That reaching is one of the most human things we do, and one of the most powerful. It is yours to do today, and tomorrow, and every quiet evening after that. All you need is the next page. Thank you for listening to English Through Great Stories. I hope these words have given you something to think about and something to feel. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and keep reaching for the best version of yourself. The books are waiting.